Please welcome Richard Dumas.
Good afternoon, and welcome back. Hope everybody had a good lunch. Hope you got some coffee, because we got a lot going on this afternoon. First of all, let me see, did anybody get a bobblehead yet? No? Wait, I see one, two, that's it? Wow, okay. We got to get some good questions going on later on. Maybe we have a bobblehead around.
First question, how do I get a bobblehead?
That's not a good question. So actually, before we get started, I wanted to thank a couple of people. And it's interesting that he raised his hand, because I wanted to thank John Sheely. John actually manages the entire .NET Corp website and has also built the conference site and the mobile site. So he wears a lot of hats and he gets a lot of things done. I think he's done a great job on the conference website. So let's give him a round of applause. No, but no bobblehead. And the second person, one of the main reasons people come to this conference, not only to meet folks and network and whatnot, is really for all of the content, all the sessions that we put on. So it's a big effort to go through all of these sessions, to pick them, to line up the speakers. This year we also have the Ignite sessions, which was another big effort. So let's give Commander Joe a big round of applause, who organized all that. Let's see, where's my clicker? So over the past year, we've realized strong growth across all customer segments, as Naveen described in his keynote this morning. But in particular, our commercial products have been adopted at a very rapid rate at all levels of government, from local government, state government, federal government, the Township of Langley, the City of Baltimore, the City of Denver, and the Army and the Navy and the Marines are all customers of .NET Nuke, all use .NET Nuke. And for that reason, we decided to invite Les Benito, who is the director of the DoD's public web program, and they have, under his management, over 750 public web properties. So we invited Les to be our keynote speaker this afternoon. So please give a warm welcome, warm .NET Nuke welcome for Les Benito.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad you guys had lunch right before my presentation. So I'll try not to make you fall asleep during my presentation. I got to tell you, it's always great to be out of the DC area, especially during this interesting time, which is right before a presidential election. You know, DC is an interesting place. It's a place where people go around, walking around, lost in thought, primarily because it's such unfamiliar territory. But I can't take credit for that one. That was the Secretary of Defense said that one in one of his speeches. So, there we go. Okay, so Department of Defense. You might have heard of us. We do a few things. For those of you that don't know, the Department of Defense is made up of all the services. So the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps make up the Department of Defense. And it's a pretty big group of folks. We have folks all over the world. We have folks in 133 different countries around the world. And there's a lot of things that are going on. And one of the things that happened in 2005, there was a base realignment and closure that came out, law, that said we need to realign all of these services and all of these organizations and try to get some efficiencies. And one of the things that happened was there were different media services for the different military services. There was the Air Force News Agency that was down in San Antonio, Texas. There was a Naval Media Center in Anacostia in DC area. And there was a Marine Corps News Center and the Soldiers Media Center. They're both in Crystal City, Virginia, and in the headquarters for the American Forces Information Service that were in Alexandria, Virginia. You might have seen some of their products. You might be familiar with some of them. Stars and Stripes newspaper, the American Forces Network, Soldiers Radio and Television News, the Pentagon Channel, and of course, websites as well. So those combined together to become the Defense Media Activity. And Defense Media Activity is now headquartered in Fort Meade, Maryland. And that happened in 2008 when that consolidation happened. A little squeaky ground here, I'm gonna move over. So it's been an interesting time because along with all that consolidation came a lot of different ideas, ways of doing things, and some folks thought it's not really a consolidation, it should just be a co-location. We'll just all be together in the same building, and that's not going to work. That's not how we really get our efficiencies of scale. So the real issue that we had, as far as I'm concerned, is that we had the disparate public web programs for different services. So whether it was the Air Force Public Web Program with its 350 sites or the Navy Public Web Program with their 145 sites, these were all disparate programs, and each of them had their own unique requirements, needs, and issues as well. So bringing that together was quite of a challenge. And what really is the public web program? What are we talking about? We're not just talking about the prime sites. You have the main sites like defense.gov, af.mil, you have navy.mil, you have marines.mil. And going back to that other slide, you'll notice that the Army was not part of one of those 5 shields because the Army's public web program was actually not part of the Soldiers Media Center, so they were not included in the consolidation. However, the Army Corps of Engineers said, hey, we would like to join you guys. This makes a lot of sense. We can see the efficiencies here. We want to join you guys. So the Army Corps of Engineers joined us as well. So it's really 785 websites that we have across the globe. And it's a significant undertaking. It is. And I imagine you're saying, well, why does the Department of Defense need 785 websites? That's crazy. How many websites do you possibly need? Well, a little bit of information, something you probably don't know. The Department of Defense is the largest employer in the world. 1 million more than even number 2, which is China's Army. With 3.3 million employees around the globe, it's a challenge to continue to communicate with all those folks, keep in touch, as well as their local vicinities. And that number increases further when you think about retirees and the military families that we also have to support, whether it be by medical services or otherwise. And we have to stay in touch with those folks and keep communicating with them. The bigger reality is all of those local installations around the world have local communities that depend on those military installations for a lot of their things like economy. And without that military installations, a lot of them would be in trouble. So it's important for those local commanders to communicate not only with their internal audience on the base, but as well as the local community. And that's a pretty big undertaking. So how do we do that more efficiently, more effectively? Well, we have pretty popular websites. How popular are them? Well, I was surprised to find out when my analytics person came to me with the annual report that had all the numbers for 2011, that in 2010, we had 1.2 billion page views. And they're filtered page views, which is an interesting note, because these are filtered page views. When I say by filtered, these are after we removed all the robots crawling the sites, all of those things that are, nice numbers to show the bosses, but not real numbers. These are actual eyeballs on pages. In 2010, we had 1.2 billion. That number grew to almost 2.07 billion page views in 2011. I mean, that's an incredible number. That's a lot of people looking at our stuff. And we're estimating that this year we're going to be up to 2.8 billion, if not 3 billion, because it's growing exponentially. So what is that? I mean, how does it relate? That's over 5 million page views a day, 5.671 million page views a day. That's a lot of pages, a lot of views. A lot of people coming to our sites. But we don't just do web pages and websites. We also do things like email subscription services. People, and we're not spamming folks. We're not saying, hey, check out our new F-22. No, that's not it. These are actual people that have subscribed to our products. They've subscribed to press releases or contract releases or whatever products that we put out. A lot of them are actually from defense.gov. In 2011, we sent out 159 million emails. That's a lot of emails. So it's a lot to think about. It's a pretty big scale. I have a monitoring system that we have that we can see at any given moment where our traffic is coming from around the globe. We use Akamai for a content distribution network. And we can see where traffic is coming from around the world, what are the top 24 URLs in the last 24 hours. We can see moving scale of what's happening. This is updates every minute on the screen. It's pretty interesting. But you can see that our average bandwidth is anywhere between 450 to 500 megabits per second of sustained data transfer coming out of our system. That number is even more interesting when you realize that our video distribution is actually separated from this number. It's a separate system. So all of that is just images and web pages and those things. So it's not the really big content. So it's a lot of traffic. So those public web programs combined in 2008 and became the DoD Public Web Program. And what is DoD Public Web Program? Well, really we are, probably an easy way to explain it is we're a cloud services provider. We're a cloud services provider for the Department of Defense. You know, our core mission, the very core of what we do is we provide a content management system for all the users that we have in the field to be able to update their sites. We also provide them with analytics tools to be able to see the effectiveness of their communication strategies. We also provide customer support, very challenging, especially when you have folks scattered across the globe, different time zones. We also provide training, which is another big challenge for us, same reason. We have to get all those folks trained, so when we make changes to our systems, we have to be very careful how do we deploy that and make sure that we train folks, because the last thing we want to do is surprise them with, oh, here's a new functionality, congratulations, and figure out how to use it. That's your problem. We can't do that. So we really got to focus on training as well. We also provide migration services. All of those disparate public web programs are still on different systems. We cannot maintain that. We have to consolidate onto one system. Absolutely cannot maintain that. In order to get the economies of scale, to be able to do the things we want to do, we have to consolidate those programs. So the migration folks are the guys that bring those disparate sites onto our new system. We also do things like search engine optimization, where we help folks with their search engine, and we have the search engine systems that run on their sites, as well as the email subscription services that I discussed earlier. So, of course, like any relationship, these different public web programs brought a lot of baggage with them. And the baggage that they brought is actually 8 different content management systems. 6 of those were homegrown content management systems, custom built, proprietary. You've all heard the drill. And the last 2 were SharePoint. Actually, the Army Corps is all over the place. Some sites are static, some are on SharePoint. It's an interesting mix. So how do we do that? Well, we need to consolidate all of them, and we are going to do it with our system, which is called AP-PIMS. And AP-PIMS is not just the content management system. I mean, that's the core. The absolute most important part of AP-PIMS is the core, is the CMS. Okay? And AP-PIMS stands for the American Forces Public Information System. I underlined it in case you needed some help. Sorry. Apologize for that. But so AP-PIMS is our system that we will be able to bring all these sites together on. It's not going to be an easy process. It's not going to be a quick process, but we're going to make it happen. So the problem was that the current systems they were proprietary systems. We were the only ones that could build them. We were the only ones that could test them. We were the only ones that could maintain them. We were the only ones that could find bugs on them. We got no help. There was no help. We were the only ones that could do it. So it was a big challenge. The next thing, there's a lack of externally developed tools. I couldn't just go and buy a module or a theme and apply it to one of these proprietary systems. It just didn't work that way. And no experienced developers in these tools, because the only way you get the experience is if you work there in the first place. So we bring a developer in and had to train them 3 to 6 months to really get them up to speed on some of these larger systems just to get them to be able to work on them. So very difficult challenge. Of course, training is also a problem. We had to develop all the training from scratch, deploy all that training, train all those folks around the world, a lot of folks. And all of that adds up to being a costly proposition for us. And I have dedicated myself, and my team has dedicated, we have dedicated to really find ways to save money. Because I'm a taxpayer just like you guys are. And I want the right things being done with my tax dollars. I don't just want people to blow them on, hey, here's a new project we want to try out. No, we need to do things smartly in the government in order to make it effective. So it's very important for me. Things that I was looking at when looking at different content management systems to become the core of AP-PIMS was that it had to be multi-site capable. It had to be .NET based because all of my team was .NET. All my developers were .NET developers. All of our systems were already Microsoft systems, Microsoft SQL and so forth. That was a big key for us. It had to also have a development framework, be a development framework for us to be able to develop the tools that we want to do the things we want to do. It had to be proven. It had to have been out there. Folks had to be using it and proven in large-scale environments. And very important for us, and I'll get a little more into that later, is it had to be secure. Very important. So I'm glad to share with you today that not only will we, but the new version of AP-PIMS 4.0, which we deployed back in May and are using now, is powered by .NET Nuke. So that's a good time. So where do we go from here, right? You folks in this audience are what make .NET Nuke so powerful. The open source community, you folks that have these installations out there that are doing all these things, that are dealing with the security issues that we can't just deal with ourselves. We learn from you. Very, very valuable tool for us. We learn, mistakes that you've made. We see things that, if it's not in the documentation, we can look and find some other folks maybe in some forums that have dealt with the same issues that we've dealt with. It's a very powerful thing. The roadmap that is established by DNN is terrific. We are doing so much to try to do things like migrate those guys and train those guys that sometimes the next big thing is not on the top of our radar and is not the top of a priority for things that we're developing. So having DNN build the new tools that really move us into the new technology that's out there that we want to take advantage of really makes that great for us. Externally developed tools. I mean, this is huge. Previously we had to build any module tool we wanted to use. We had to build it from scratch. Starting day one, line one of code, all the way through it. Now we can find tools that get us 80, 90% of the way there. Purchase them from the community, get the open source, and finalize the development piece so that it fits into our environment. That's huge. It cuts down development time significantly. 50, 60, 70%. Costs, again, significantly reduced. There's experienced developers out there. There are folks like you that worked on DNN that have experience, and when we're hiring, which by the way we're hiring, we can find guys that actually know about DNN, and it's not a proprietary system. They've done it before, so they can come in and they can hit the ground running. That's huge, very big, very important for us. Training as well. There's training that already exists out there that we can incorporate into our training sites and really get that out there. So very, very good things. So what are some of the challenges that we had to face? Well, the first challenge that we had to face was implementation. How do we implement this thing? We've heard a lot of ways to do .NET Nuke from a lot of different folks. But we felt that the best way for us to implement .NET Nuke was to separate the different services into their own instances. That gave us a lot of good features. It allowed us, first of all, to standardize that instance and to remove some of the extraneous things that weren't going to be used by that service, for example. There are modules that are developed specifically for services. The Air Force has special modules. The Marines have specific modules. So instead of having them on a system that other people can see those modules, by dedicating it to that service, we can really pare down those modules and the skins to just the things that those folks are going to need to use. Easier to use. Security roles, same thing. There's established workflows for different services, and they are different. And we can establish those within the instances and deploy that to a service as a whole. So this is the way we decided to deploy it. It's an example of some of the skins that we have for the different sites. These are sub-sites. That's a Marine sub-site. That's a DoD sub-site in the middle, a Navy sub-site top right, Army Corps, and Air Force on the left. Actually, the Air Force one will be changing soon, so it'll be interesting. I'll talk about that a little bit. Of course, security. Security is very, very important for us, as you can imagine. In case you weren't aware, we're a pretty big target. In 2010, the internet experienced the largest denial of service attack ever. And a lot of the sites that were targeted were US government sites. We were number 2 on that list. Defense.gov specifically was number 2 on that list. When you think about denial of service attack, it's a very big attack. For those of you that are not aware, what happened was a lot of government computers in South Korea were taken over by malicious malware, and bad actors were able to take over those machines and then use those machines to attack sites. So in 48 hours, the Department of Defense website saw 27 years worth of traffic in 48 hours. That's a lot of attacks, and we weren't even the worst hit. But there were sites that went down. FBI went down, the Treasury went down, CIA went down. So there were a few sites that went down. We did not, so that's good. So that's a good thing. So we will, that's a very important thing. So how do we do this in a way to ensure that we continue the security that is so vital for our operations? I mean, the last thing we want is for somebody to come to work one day and their websites to face, especially if it's somebody important like the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. He might have a problem with it. So how do we do that? Well, we have an ace in the hole. Every single employee in the Department of Defense is issued what's called a common access card. That common access card is, what? Yeah. Anyway, a common access card is a card that contains a smart chip. And also, you have a PIN that goes with it. When you get issued your CAT card, you have to put in a PIN. I believe you have a range between 6 and 10 numbers or letters or whatever it is. But those are the two components that really are our ace in the hole. Every DoD employee has one of these. So we were able to do something interesting with .NET Nuke. We split our front ends so that if you were an author and wanted to modify your site, you went to your AP-PIMS URL, which was different than the public front-end URL. So 2 disparate, separate front ends. We removed the ability to log in completely from the front end on the public side. And you could only log in on the back side. And in order to even get to that URL, as soon as you put the URL on the back side, it immediately prompts you for your CAT card. It wants you to put your CAT card in your computer and pin in. Once you pin in, you are then given access into that side of the house, and you can then do all the wonderful things that you want to do. So that's key. We're looking on ways to make that better, and I'm sure we'll work with the .NET New folks and find better solutions. But it's a great solution so far, because it really is an ace in the hole that we have right now. We also have a 3-step development environment. We have our development environment, which isn't set up exactly like the live environment, but it's the same version of DNN, same version of Microsoft SQL, and all those things for their developers to develop in and use and do all of their work in on a regular basis. Once those modules and tools are built inside the development environment, we then move all of those things over to a staging environment. And the staging environment is built exactly the same as a live environment, with the 2 front ends and so on and so forth. So that gives us a real test to see, is this thing going to blow up the site? So that's great. We can really test it in the real environment and make sure that it's good to go before we deploy it to the live environment. And then finally, we deploy it to a live environment when we're secure and good to go. We can also run our security scanning on it inside the staging environment, which allows us to find things like things in the code that are open holes to allow folks to do bad things. So that's where we are as far as how we deploy these things. Another challenge that we had was we had a big requirement to share information. And when we say share information, not just within an instance, but actually across instances. So it's very important for the military services to be able to share information to DoD back and also within those services. So if somebody at the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force puts imagery in or stories in, they want to be able to take that. The Marine Corps wants to be able to use that stuff on Marines.mil. So how do we share that information up and down the chain? Same thing. 2MAF might want to post some of the content that's done by Marine Corps headquarters on their site. So how do we share that information? So we started with the shared media service. And the shared media service was a tool that we built that allowed us to put all of our imagery and media in one place. So that if 7 different sites wanted to use that same image, it only had to exist one time. That is obviously a big deal for us because we have probably over 1 million images at this point that we have, and they're large, full resolution images. And that number grows exponentially every day. We have a ton of imagery. So we can share that data. We've built our modules to tie into that shared media service and be able to use the images from inside that shared media service. I've actually put in a screenshot of an example of what the shared media service looks like. You can use this to search for imagery. So let's say you're putting together a story on something happening on your base with the fighter wing, and there's an F-15 or an F-22 fighter wing. You can do a search for F-22, find an image that might not be on your site, but might actually be somewhere else in the service, and pull that image and actually use it on your story, and it's tied in together. If you look at the tabs on the top, you see My Images, Site Images, and Service Images. That's where you can see either the images that you've put in the system, images that anybody in your organization that run your site have put in the system, or finally, any image that's available for the entire military service. We're able to pull that, use it, and deploy it onto different things, and I'll go into a little bit more of that later. Another big challenge for us was training and migration. As of today, we have over 8,000 content managers worldwide. That's a huge number when you think about training and think about keeping them up to speed on the latest things that you're deploying. We actually have a weekly code deployment schedule, and a lot of them are just fixes and tweaks and things like that, but we have to keep them aware of all the things that are going on. And every time we deploy a new version of a tool, we have to train our folks. So it was very important for us to make it easy for folks to get up to speed on the latest developments. So we built an AP-PIMS training site, which is actually also a DNN site, which allows folks to go in based on their security role and what site they manage. They can go in, they can get in here, register, and they are given the appropriate training for what they do. So if they're a site manager, they get site manager training, and they're able to go through it. We have videos that show how to manage your site, how to add pages, how to do all the things that you do inside of DNN. And then once they finalize, they take their computer-based training tests. We send them back to the site manager of the site and say, okay, this person is done, certified, ready to go. They can get on your site and do some great things. So this was a great tool for us. And it's a growing tool that I hope to automate more in the future. And I'll talk about a little bit about that in my future slide here. So where are we today? We're currently in the middle of migrating the Army Corps of Engineers and the Marine Corps. We have already migrated 131 sites onto DNN. That's a very significant number when you realize that we've done all of that in about 6 months. And when you think about that, it came from SharePoint, it's even more impressive. So I got a great team, great group of folks that do some amazing things for us. I got dedicated folks that are really dedicated to the mission, can really do some fantastic work, and I'm very lucky to have them on my staff. So that's where we are right now, and hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be done with the Marine migration tomorrow. And we hope to launch the new Marines.mil site tomorrow if we get approval from the general. Oh, the general has to approve it. So he's getting briefed right now, as a matter of fact. So he's getting briefed on the new site, and if we get his approval, we'll launch it tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be a little later, but we hope to do it this month at minimum. So what's the future? What are we looking at in the future? Well, the first things we got to do is we got to bring the rest of those sites over onto AP-PIMS. Okay? Air Force, have to redesign the Air Force site and migrate all those sites. 366 sites, it's going to take a little while. Then we also have to migrate the Navy. and the rest of the DoD sites that we have. You know, the shared content service is something that we are actively planning right now. It will work very similar to the way the shared media service works, except with standardized content. So within DoD, we have a lot of standardized content, whether it's a news release or a biography or a fact sheet. These are all standardized pieces of content that are the same regardless of where you are in DoD. So it makes sense for us to develop a centralized sharing of that content service to be able to share that content across the board. So if you wanted to put the biography of the Secretary of Defense on your website, you don't have to recreate it. It's already there. It's already in a system that you can pull. Also, this helps us tremendously to move stories and all kinds of data up and down the chain and across instances. We're very excited about the new sharing features in 7.0, so we'll see how that works out. Very excited about that. So data services, again, you might have heard of Open Data, a big federal government initiative to push data out to be available to the public, to be able to do some pretty interesting things. I would love to make available via feeds and tools and XML feeds all of my data, everything, all my imagery, everything, you name it. And I'd love to see what you guys can come up with it. I've seen some amazing things already, web apps, mobile apps, all kinds of things. So looking forward to that. Looking to add some directory services into the system to help us deal with cross instances users, as well as to help us automate the training. Because my goal would be for someone to go into the training site, do their training, and automatically be made site admin or whatever they are on their site dynamically without having to deal with the manual process that we have to do now to create them as users on those sites. So that's where we are going in the future. And probably one of the most important things that I want to do in the future, that I want us to do, is to share what we build with you guys. We want to make it available so that you guys can download the tools that we've built, and you can use them. You can have fun with them. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? I mean, that's what this open source thing is all about, right? So we can develop, and you can learn from our mistakes, and there's plenty to go around. And we can share that with you guys, and at the same time, any tools we develop from scratch, we will share with you guys. And we'll figure out the best place to put these tools. I'm not sure whether that's GitHub or wherever, but we'll figure that out. But that's a big thing for us. So I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. You've gotten some information from some of the things we've talked about. There's one last thing, though. I figure tomorrow's a big launch date. How about if I gave you a sneak peek of what the new Marines.mil website looks like? So we've worked really hard on this. You know, this is there's a lot of custom tools that were built and modules, specifically requirements. We have a lot of folks that want to do some interesting things on here, but some really cool tools. So let me show that to you right now. So this is the new Marines.mil website. So forget about the ads, they're just placement ads right now, that screenshot. But some really interesting things going on. You'll notice that we have a rotator, and actually we've, how many of you are familiar with some modules called dig, like dig article, dig rotate, and all those? You guys familiar with that? Okay. We liked them so much, we thought Mike did such a great job that we hired Mike, and Mike works with us now. And one of the things that Mike has done is he's really done some great templates for this. We're actually using dig rotate, slightly varied version of dig rotate for the main rotator that'll now tie into the visual information distribution center to actually get videos and display videos right in that rotator, as well as images and all kinds of other things. This on point piece that you see in the middle there is actually going to be like for breaking news or important top items that we want to feature. If there's something in it, it actually collapses and it goes away. It goes away. You don't see it. So it only shows up if there's something there. The imagery that you see on the left is actually tying into that shared media service. And the content managers from Marines.mil can actually go in and look at all the images that have been put in by the Marine Corps and pick and choose the best images to display here on the homepage. And we have the ads on the right. And then down the bottom, they can choose what categories of news they want to display, and that's actually all of the news items from across the Marine Corps. So they're able to pick the categories, and anybody who has put in a story based on those categories inside the system, which by the way are standardized Marines categories, they show up here based on the latest story first. So a lot of automation, a lot of cool things. We're excited about it. I think it's going to be a good site, kind of a champagne cork topper at the end of the Marine migration. We're very excited about that. There's a lot of other tools in there that you can explore. The photo section, the video section is very cool. So hope you can come back and take a look at it after it launches. So with that, I want to thank Veen, Sean, all the .NET Nuke folks for inviting me up here. I appreciate it. I hope I've been able to give you some ideas, some thoughts about how to use this in your environment. And you can always reach me on Twitter. That's my Twitter account. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
So I think we have a few minutes left for questions, and we got some mic runners who are going to come around if you have any questions for Les. And I've got Commander Joe bobblehead for the best question, so let's get those hands up.
Where's my bobblehead?
Oh, we got one for you. We have one over here. We got two over here.
Yeah, Les, could you tell me a little bit about your development team, like the size, number of people?
Sure.
That got 100 and what was it, 31 or 71 sites turned over in 6 months? You know,
Yeah.
how big is your team?
Actually, the development team is really developing the tools. The migration team is really the folks that are migrating all those sites and that content. So is that what you want to know, how big the migration team is? So our migration team right now for the Marine Corps is, I believe, 4 guys. Yeah, we worked our guys pretty hard. They haven't slept in 6 months. They're hoping to get a nap after tomorrow. But for the last month or so, we've done kind of an all hands on deck, and even I was migrating Marine sites. So that was fun. We got everybody who was available that could do anything to pick a site and migrate it and work with the site manager. So we've done a little bit of more than we wanted to, but we wanted to get it launched by the end of October.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you're using for your video module? What technology? It looks
Sure.
very clean.
Well, so there's a Defense Visual Information Distribution Service, which is a system that the Army runs, actually, that has a very large storage capacity, and they do video streaming for tons of video across the Department of Defense. And basically, we just built a player based on APIs that tie into their system. And that player just feeds we have the ability, so for example, inside the system there, inside the rotator, all the content manager has to do is put the ID number for that video ID on divots, and it dynamically pulls that video from divots at the right size, and it puts it into the player at the right size. So we're trying to minimize the amount of work that the content managers have to do.
Is that something that you will share eventually?
Divots is not part of our operation. They actually do a lot of work with a lot of folks. I mean, you can go to Divots, you can actually go there and you can play with their tools, and you can actually register to see all the videos and media that they have. I don't know if they're going to open those APIs out to the public. They might be some interest there.
Okay. You talked a little bit about security, I guess, and so I wanted to ask you, have you guys ever been compromised? And if so, what is the most interesting challenge you've had to deal with when it comes to security, especially on an open source platform where you're publishing things?
Well, we have. As far as being compromised, a lot of our attacks are like those DDoS attacks, and because we have behind a CAC card, that really helps to keep us from being compromised, and luckily enough, we have not been. Again, knock on wood. But the reality is that we fully expect that it will happen at some point. I mean, we're realistic, and we have security tools that we constantly scan against our code and against our front ends to ensure that we are as secure as possible. I got a security guy that's probably pulling out his hair right now because that's what he does. He's very worried about security every day. But that's good. That's what I hired him for. He's terrific. So that's what we do. We scan everything we build. We are constantly scanning our front ends. We're constantly getting scans from bad actors. I mean, we're constantly seeing port scans. We're seeing SQL injection attempts all the time. So hopefully, we've been lucky so far, I think. But I think it's a little more than luck. I think I got a good team that's been able to do a good job of keeping us secure.
The question I have,
Yeah, oh, sorry.
the question I have is related to how do you manage all that? Because we're talking about that you have a bunch of servers, a bunch of websites, and obviously you have a bunch of users. Now we're talking about the host account, the admin account, and everything else
Right.
in there. So basically, how do you manage all those users and delegations behind the scenes? Because it's a massive amount.
Right. So it is quite a task. Our help desk operations does a lot of the management of the user accounts. We don't give out the ability to create accounts or any of that to any of those site managers out there. We restrict that to just us. Nobody has host access. Nobody even has site admin access, to be honest, because that would allow them to modify skins and all those things that we don't want them doing. So we've created a new level of security, which is a site manager, not a site admin, but a site manager, where they can still manage all the pages and do a lot of things, but they don't have the full access that a site admin has. But we do that ourselves, and that's part of the training process. So when they go and register to get training, they are then given accounts, and we know what level of account they get. And so it's an ongoing process as we work with them. The help desk, along with the training folks, do all of that. A single look. No, that's the directory services that I want to deploy. Right now, all of that is done per instance, if you will, and I want that to be centralized, whether it's Active Directory or something like that, to really manage all of that, and to then automate some of the training. That's one of the things we want to work on. Yes.
Do you know when you're going to give some of the custom modules you've built back to the community so that we could actually take a look at some of those, or?
We actually are hoping, all these migrations have really come right on top of the other. We're really working really hard to get all these tools. And actually, the reality is those tools are being updated on a regular basis. But I'll work with Sean and DNN team to see if we can get some of that out to you guys as soon as we can. So I don't have a date yet, but soon? How's that?
Someone on that side.
Yeah. I believe we're on 6.2.2. Yeah, 6.2.2. Very excited about some of the tools that are coming out with 7.0. I'm going to test the heck out of it, beat it up a lot. Yes.
I'm curious why the Air Force needs 3 times as many web properties as everyone else.
Interesting question. So in this scenario, that included all of the active duty, reserve, and Air National Guard. So it's the Air National Guard alone has 50 sites, one per state, and then you have the reserve commands as well, which are a different beast. So that's why it's a lot bigger.
What was your target date for getting the rest of the 600 sites converted?
If you ask my team, it's totally different than my idea, but we hope to be done with the Air Force and Marines by the end of next year. That's my goal. And I think that's aggressive because there's so many left, but I'm realistic too, but I'm still going to push them hard. Yes?
Hello, you said you're doing a training piece for this as well, and I'm wondering, is that an online training piece? Are you using a SCORM LMS on DNN, and what is it?
Interesting, we're looking at some SCORM LMSs actually to incorporate into our training site, but the majority of it's all online, web-based. We have videos that we've attached, actually screen videos showing folks how to add photos and do all those things inside of their design of their sites for the Air Force or the Marines, the Marines or the Army Corps, that kind of thing. But it's primarily the computer-based training. And then when it comes to site manager, there's a lot of one-on-one training with folks from our training team that we do remotely on the phone or whatever.
Did you customize the registration component, and how do you manage that many users and roles?
I don't think we did. That's actually, I can't answer that question. Carl, do you know? We did not. We did not. We manage it using our help desk to manage inside the registration, inside per instance. They add users to sites and so forth. We didn't really modify it. Anyone else?
Any more questions?
Nope.
Got one more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just wondering, are you using any of the social features for interaction between any of the...
I'm sorry, I can't hear
Oh,
you.
sorry, louder. Are you using any of the social features or planning to use the social features to have interaction between military staff?
We actually are not using any of the social features yet. I mean, it is part of 622, but we have not. It's kind of a situation where we're concerned about folks registering on our public sites like that and what they could do. Until we get our front-end databases in a more secure environment, we're not doing that yet.
Can I, bonus question? You mentioned going to 7.0. How are you going to manage that upgrade process from different DNN versions, given that there's a reasonably, they come out reasonably frequently?
The short answer is very carefully. I don't know yet. One of the biggest challenges I have is because there's a significant change to the user interface on the back end. That's a significant training hurdle that I have to overcome with folks in the field. The folks that have already trained on 6.2 have to get retrained on 7.0. So, we test a lot of things in that staging environment, and we do a lot of that on a regular basis, but it's a full process. We also have to test our modules to make sure that they're going to be working. It's going to take a while. I'm not sure when we're going to upgrade to 7.0.
Do we have one more question? Last question?
I just wanted to know if you were using the standard search provider that comes with DNN, or if you went external.
We're not. We're using USA Search, which is a federal government-wide USA Search tool that's actually based on Bing. It's available for all of us in the federal government to use for our sites. We set it up. We set up the site IDs. It crawls our site, very much like if you're familiar with a Google search appliance. We used to have that. We switched over to USA Search. So it crawls our site all the time and then updates the search queries. Now, for some things, like for the photo gallery, that is searching internally. But for the most part, it's using USA Search. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Les. We'll see you guys all back here tonight at 6:30 for DNN After Dark. Remember, someone's going to win a yellow Lamborghini. It's outside. See it?